In this video, we're going to question some of the evidence of polarization. Up to this point, we've looked at different evidence that suggests there might be polarization amongst the voters, amongst the parties, and members of Congress. But maybe we're witnessing something different. Traditionally, in previous decades, the parties were mixed. And crude example, let's think of these two jars as a political party. You've got a Republican Party and a Democratic Party. Within each one is a mix of different views. There might be liberal Republicans and moderate ones and more conservative ones. There were liberal Democrats, more moderate ones, and more conservative Democrats. It was all mixed up. However, in recent decades, what's happened is there has been a sorting, where in the Republican jar, it is just people that lean right. In the Democratic jar, it is just people that lean left. So the views haven't changed. They haven't got further apart. They've just sorted themselves more neatly into vehicles. One book that takes a look at this is called The Big Sort by Bill Bishop. He says people aren't really sorting by political views. Their political views aren't getting further apart. What's happening is geographically people's lifestyles are getting similar. There is an urban and rural divide. And so as you're clustering with people that share the same lifestyle, you're also sharing the same values and views. You're producing more homogeneous social and professional groups, which makes, again, it's not really getting further apart. It's just neatly sorting into two recognizable political groups. We can see evidence of this in election results. Here's a 2020 presidential election map. We can see a very clear urban and rural voting pattern. Each dot represents 250,000 votes. The blue dots are clustered around the 18 or so major urban centers. And even in less populous states, the blue dots, the Democratic voters, are clustered around the highest density areas. The red dots, the Republican dots, are clustered around the outside of those urban centers. And so that's a very clear urban-rural divide that would lend support to that Bill Bishop hypothesis, that sort of Democratic areas are becoming more urban as they share lifestyle and political views, and rural areas are becoming more Republican as again, they are more homogeneous groups. That's one example. Another look at sorting comes from Morris Fiorina in his book Unstable Majorities. He takes a different approach, but he finds the same thing. He notes that public opinion on issues has not changed for decades. But what's happening is parties are sorting into more complete homogeneous groups, and those groups themselves are more polarized. Here's an example. So, views on abortion. You can lump American views on abortion into three categories: always legal, never legal, sometimes legal. If we use those, we can track public opinion back to the 1970s, and it hasn't changed. In terms of the proportion of the population that falls into each category, there's been no change for decades. Here's what that typically has looked like. You would have always legal, sometimes legal, always illegal. You would have a mix of different voters that felt each way. There might be some Democrats that were very anti-abortion. Some of them favored sort of a little more nuanced. Some of them always legal. Same things for Republicans and moderates. Each group had a mix of different views within them. In recent years, that hasn't been the case. What's happening, however, is that people are sorting. Democrats are sorting into an always legal kind of group. Moderates and sort of independent voters would fall into that sometimes legal category. Republicans are pretty strictly always illegal. And the parties have sorted. The views haven't changed. The number of people espousing each view hasn't changed. What's changed is how those parties identify and how the supporters have coalesced on issue support. This is, a way to think about this. The public hasn't changed in their views. They've just selected parties based on those views where they didn't before. And that comes from the elites. The political party leaders have used issues like abortion or gun control and many other issues and staked out a position on that. So the leaders have polarized, which has caused the voters to coalesce around those issue themes by party. So again, it's sorting. The views aren't changing, it's that people are sorting into groups based on those views. In this sense, maybe the polarization that we were seeing is just polarization kind of in our minds. It is affective polarization that's based on emotion, hostile feelings for the opposing party, that these become automatic in voters' minds. That's from Chateau Iyengar in Westwood. Democrats and Republicans both say that the other party members are hypocritical, selfish, closed-minded, and unwilling to socialize across party lines. Both parties saying this about each other, called effective polarization. Well, maybe effective polarization is easier when the groups are sorted. So maybe we're not seeing polarization. Maybe people aren't getting further apart in their views. Maybe what's happening is that people are just sorting their views by party in a coherent manner, which provides discrete groups. And then once we've got identifiable groups that all share the same views, maybe it's easier to generalize. And maybe that sorting is what's fueling effective polarization. So maybe we're not witnessing polarization. Maybe it's just sorting. However, maybe that sorting can contribute to things like effective polarization.